Let's have a look at the VIO rendering. In Caddie 18 we've introduced a couple of enhancements which will make life quite a bit easier when working with AEC models and VIO rendering. Well, first of all materials are normally processed within the style or taken up within the style of the AEC object itself. So if you want to change whatever AEC object uses what material, you have to go into the style manager to manage it. What we've done in Caddie 18 is I can take any material. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a custom material. Let's call it AAA. I'm going to give it a nice and bright red color, red orangey color, with a reflective color of, let's say, yellow. And I'm going to apply a standard paint finish to that. So once I add it, it adds it into the list. Now in Caddie 18, if I change a material or a AEC style, all walls done with that style will change. But what do you do if you want to change only one wall? And that's what we've got in Caddie 18. Any material that you've got, you can just tell Caddie, attach it to an object and then indicate the object. It will pick up the object, and if the object has multiple components, it will ask you to which component you want to attach it. For instance, do you want to attach it to the plaster or to the brickwork or whatever. It will also give you an option to change all the objects using the style. In other words, all the walls itself will change, or it will give you an option to overwrite the material just on that object. So if I say overwrite it on just that object, it will only change that one wall and not the others, which is quite useful to do. Then if we later have a look at the rendering, the render settings are pretty much the same as they were before. We've got tone mapping. I'll get back to the tone mapping just now. But then we've introduced what we call progressive rendering. As soon as you see it on screen, it will immediately make sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on render, and let's have a look what happens. Now while it analyzes geometry, you will see that the render that it creates, it will take it from a very low res image and it will enhance it until you get the final end result. As you can see at the bottom, it's starting to render. So let's just see what it does. And you can see from this render, it applied that material to that one wall that I've indicated. So once this render is complete, I'm going to make a couple of changes. Why would I want to make changes? Well, because if we have a look at that little render, you can see it's quite dark. I want to make it a bit lighter or maybe increase the contrast. So I'm going to close the render and do exactly the same render and use the tone mapping to do that. So the brightness I'm going to push up a bit. The contrast I'm going to push up a bit, and I'm going to do the same render. So let's see what we get. Once again, it will go through the processing, analyzing the geometry, and when we get the end result, you'll clearly see the difference between the previous render and this render that I'm going to get. And immediately you can see it's quite a bit lighter than before. Now what I've done is I have not increased the ambient intensity. The VIO rendering works much the same as a human's eyes. If you stand in a dark room looking out to a bright area, everything within the room that you are standing in will actually appear a lot darker than it is when you don't have any bright lights shining from the outside. So what the tone mapping does is it changes the balance between the dark and the lit area so that you can see a lot more detail inside, although you might have bright light or reflections coming from the outside in. So that's basically enhancements and changes made to the VIO rendering. As you can see from this, it's quite a low res render, normal quality, but very good results.